Just outside the city walls, Llanthony Secunda Priory has seen Gloucester thrive for over 900 years. What was once a major Augustinian priory, the remains of Llanthony Secunda are now a scheduled monument which welcomes visitors throughout the year.
It's so beautiful and totally miraculous that you just come around the corner in all the developments of Gloucester and this place is still here. It's just stunning.
I spent many years driving past, looking in, thinking, I wonder what that is. And then I joined the Civic Trust and came on a little tour here.
In 1136, after many attacks on their land, the Augustinian canons of Llanthony Prima in Wales found refuge in Gloucester. Being both skilled and educated, the canons were soon working in the community.
The Augustinian canons are a very outward-looking order. So here in Gloucester we know that the canons were involved in the schooling in Gloucester, they had a charter, and also they owned a huge amount of property. So they were integral in the business of Gloucester as well as doing business around the country. Llanthony is very lucky in the fact that we have a huge amount of manuscripts, particularly cartularies that are in the National Archive, the lists of farm equipment and produce that they exchanged when they were leasing out farms locally. And actually is one of the few priories in the country that has that historical document that you can draw on that tells you about the day-to-day life of the priors.
As the importance of Llanthony Secunda grew, it became one of the richest Augustinian houses in the country.
The priory's prosperity and accommodating nature can be particularly seen within one of the site's most prominent features, the Western Gatehouse. The priory once hosted royal visitors such as King Henry III, Eleanor of Provence, Edward II, John of Gaunt, and notably King Henry VII. It was for his visit in 1500 and 1501 that this gatehouse was likely constructed, and you can still see his royal arms above it today.
But this prosperity was not to last. During Henry VIII's reign, Llanthony Secunda became a victim of the dissolution of the monasteries.
Dissolution is where Henry VIII was looking to increase his coffers, and the religious houses held much of the wealth of the country, and to get his hands on that, he decided that he would dissolve them.
Here we have our medieval range. Once a much larger structure, the 6 bays here are all that remains. In 1538, at the Dissolution, a local gentryman bought the site and converted the inner precinct and church into his own mansion house. The rest of the site he leased out, and it continued to be used for agricultural purposes. The lower floor here dates from around the 13th, 14th century. It was likely used to house livestock and possibly oxen. The timber-framed upper story is much different in nature. It's slightly later. It was likely built around 1451, and at least in part it was used to accommodate some of the priory's more important individuals. Our brick range dates from around 1520. It is built on the foundations of a much earlier building, and elements of this building can still be seen within the windows and doorways of this present building. The brickwork is particularly significant. It is some of the oldest surviving brickwork still in Gloucestershire today. Originally, the building was 2 stories. At some point in the 17th century, after the Dissolution, the floor level was raised 1.2 metres, and it became how it looks today. And much like the rest of the site, it was likely used for agricultural purposes. Certainly by the 17th century, it had become known as the Great Stable.
Having become a gentleman's residence and then a farm, more destruction followed. The priory site was the scene of vicious artillery duels and fighting during the English Civil War.
This tithe barn dates from around the 14th or 15th century. It was originally used to store the grain that belonged to the priory. Significantly, in 1643, this was the site where the Royalists camped during the Siege of Gloucester, And from this site and from this very tithe barn, they fired artillery towards the city and the city walls. Interestingly, we are one of a few sites that claim to be the origin of the nursery rhyme Humpty Dumpty. During the siege, the Royalists imported a cannon from Holland, at the time the largest cannon in the country. They placed it on a plinth at Llanthony, fired it upon the city, but unfortunately on the first fire, it backfired, fell off the plinth, and hence Humpty Dumpty had a great fall.
With the coming of the Industrial Revolution, the screech of wagons would be heard as the Gloucester and Dean Forest Railway Company built a goods yard and a quay on site. Against all odds, and through the dedication and vision of volunteers and partners, in 2016, restoration and conservation work began at Llanthony Secunda Priory to bring this vital piece of Gloucester's history back to life. A welcome oasis in a busy city, open to all, which hosts events and talks as well as theatre, concerts and weddings. Llanthony's future is secured through a small but dedicated group of staff and volunteers. Each shares a passion for Llanthony, working hard to preserve what remains and to celebrate and share its history with visitors from around the world.